Hi, everyone. Welcome to Balls and Strikes, brought to you by Americans for Good Government. I'm Gary Abernathy, your host, and I'm here with, as always, with Ken Buck, former congressman from the great state of Colorado. Ken, good to see you today. How have you been?
I'm doing great, Gary. What a wonderful time of year to be an American, close to our 250th birthday. Things can't be better.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Listen, I want to dive right in today to another example of the kind of thing we're talking about that Americans for Good Government is trying to bring to people's attention and fight back. California recently spent $189 million on tablets for prisoners, while working families there can't even pay the rent. So on May 26th, the House Oversight Committee opened a formal investigation into California's prisoner digital tablet program, demanding records from Governor Gavin Newsom. Newsom approved this program. It's funded out of the Department of Corrections in California, which has separately received nearly $500 million in federal funds. So Christopher Rufo at City Journal also surfaced serious abuses of the program. At a time, Ken, when people are trying to pay the rent, balance the budget, we know what a mess California is. The gas prices are through the roof, much more than in most of the country because of the crazy taxes that they add to gasoline. How do you get away in that state with this kind of crazy spending in the face of an economy that's not exactly real strong right now?
Well, it's a terrible priority for California to try to propose, but as a former prosecutor, I can tell you, I saw a lot of tax fraud cases from federal prisoners who would get onto the library computer and file a tax return and get some sort of tax benefit because their wages were below a certain level. The fraud that you see when you give people that sort of and maybe it's well intentioned, but still, when you give people that sort of information and capability, and they wouldn't be in prison if they were Mother Teresa's, and so they're going to use it to do what they did outside of prison: exploit children, steal from the elderly. You're going to have identity theft there. You're going to have all kinds of crimes as a result of trying to give people a better life in prison. And that's just the crime. Now talk about the cost. Why should a taxpayer in Mississippi subsidize a tablet going to a California prisoner? That makes no sense, and it really it hurts the what the Department of Corrections is trying to do at the Federal Bureau of Prisons is trying to do federally, because the idea of incarcerating people in state systems, those are the most violent criminals, especially after you see the kinds of prosecutors that get elected in California. It's rare that they're coming up with mandatory sentences for these prisoners. And so it's only the worst of the worst. Probably harder to get into a California penitentiary than it is to get into Harvard. And these folks are now
I love
scamming
that.
us,
That's good, Ken.
being given something by the Department of Corrections in California.
But from your time on the Judiciary Committee, Ken, when someone does something like this, when a state takes federal grant money, as you've pointed out, and spends it in ways that contradict what it was designed for, where's the teeth? What can be done about that? Or does it just become another report that nobody reads?
But, Gary, it's a great point. We had Pete Sessions on a couple weeks ago talking about a bill that he had where he was trying to make sure the money doesn't go out the door at the beginning for programs like this, so that the federal government didn't have to claw back that money when it was misused. And this is a perfect example. Unfortunately, what the federal government has done under the Biden administration is just send money to the states and let them use it in whatever way they want. And it is being used in ways that are so counterproductive, like this program at the California Department of Correction.
You know, what's it say about the culture in California? They answer this, any criticism, they respond to it by saying what they always say: that's to attack the messenger, to attack the person raising the questions. What's that say about the account of when accountability, when a calls for accountability are treated as an attack rather than a duty and a responsible thing to do. What's that say about the political culture of that state?
Well, the culture's broken in California, and you can see that in just about every area. When you go to the gas pump, I leave Colorado and I pay, $3.50, $4 for a gallon of gas. I go to California, it's $6.50, $7 for a gallon of gas, and they have chosen that. Unfortunately, California has beautiful weather and has, great technology and other attractions, and the people don't want to leave, and they continue to get punished by the state and continue to stay. But at some point, people will actually feel the pain because they won't be subsidized by all these different levels of government, and hopefully they take the stand for changing what's going on in California.
At some point, though, as conservatives, we really want to see people held to account. We want to see some accountability for these terrible decisions. What do we do to claw this back? Where's the accountability? How do we stop this? Where do we stand up and say, where do we go to stand up and say, hey, you're just lying to us, and we need this back, and we need to figure out whether this money goes back to the people or whether we find something more responsible.
Gary, accountability is at the ballot box. It's really simple. If people aren't motivated by stories like that to vote for conservatives, common sense conservatives who look at the broad picture, people have got to get to the vote. They've got to get involved. Democracy is not a spectator sport, and we can't just sit by and watch this socialism grow and have the left-wing media say that it's just saving our environment and it's saving our economy. People have to get involved, and I hope that's part of what Americans for Good Government does.
Absolutely. Well, sometimes the facts really do matter, and the more that the facts become self-evident, even the New York Times can't ignore the facts all the time. So it was an interesting story. Well, Ken, it's good to talk to you again today. Let people know how they can become involved, and especially with AGG.
Yeah, please. If you like this podcast, the weekly columns that I do, the videos, the great news sources that are on the website, go to Americans4goodgov.org. And we'd love to see you there and get some of your feedback on how this podcast, Balls and Strikes, can be more relevant.